a great session by Dr. Verma, I must say. And I was just wondering, such a beautiful talk, we should record it and let all our employees hear it. Mammoth work done by them. Something he talked about LPG, so the direct benefit scheme. So that was handled by oil companies. So our team, along with IOC and BPC, we did it, whatever part was there. Coming back to the topic that we thought could be relevant to all of you, and if there is a shortcoming with the expertise that you all have, please do keep it aside. I'll try to cover up whatever knowledge I had over a... Okay, so just to bring you back the glimpses of how we evolved, just trying to set the stage. Some of you might not have been born, so you can forget about 70s. I am from that era, so although I was also pretty young at that time. So we had something called mainframe computing, right? Huge computers with companies you would not even have heard of, something called DEC. How many of you have heard of DEC, Digital Equipment Corporation?
It shows how vintage we are.
So that vanished, so I asked, because HPs and IBMs still are there. So there used to be some company like that. And very popular. I mean, it was one of the best at that point of time. Now, late 80s, we started having personal computers. So something called desktop at that point of time. Even one computer in an organization, everybody used to come there and work on it. I mean, that was the days of personal computer. Came 90s and you had something called client server. So you, again, some of the youngsters would not understand this, but there used to be something called server, a network server, and people would get connected to those and work on it. WordPerfect, if anything, anybody remembers that. Came 2000, and that is where most of the big organizations started coming up with the enterprise computing. This was the time when you had something called data centers set up. And every organization, whoever had the money for setting it for themselves or building it for commercial use. So that started coming. But one thing which happened, all these was the gap in the years, although I put in 80s, but this was late 80s, 90s, and 2000 was very early. In fact, late 90s it would have been. So the gaps between these systems which were evolving or the technologies which were evolving kept on reducing. And then we had cloud computing. So Amazon, if I'm not wrong, started selling AWS by about 2003, 4? Okay. So it was pretty early and they started selling, and cloud became a common name. By about 2010, India had a fairly good spread of cloud, and people were adopting it. So as we started moving from enterprise to cloud, something happened which was called edge computing. Edge computing meant that you had some data to be captured at the site, process it, and give the result there. So that brought back to the enterprise. So you moved out to cloud, then again came back. A famous G. So this is one technology which kills the gap of taking the data from the source to the processing side. So while we had edge computing brought in to process it at the local, with 5G coming, that is likely to disappear and you would be able to take the data anywhere you want. So again, you might go back to cloud. So while we plan the infrastructure, there are basically 3 types of organizations that we would all be in. So you have small, medium, and large, and based on how you have these enterprises, depending on the resources that are available, the kind of complexities you have, the kind of teams you have. So a lot would depend on these factors to determine you actually belong to mid or large and then do things accordingly. And typical, you would have your own data center, you would go to cloud, you would have a shared data center, and so on. So let us look at what are the kind of challenges that are faced by a technologist. So you are all well-accomplished technologists in your own areas, and I'm sure some of these things, what we face, you would have faced somewhere. So first is technology. And technology, to my mind, is one of the biggest troublemaker for all of us because it keeps changing. So every 2 years, you'll find a new version coming, a software getting sold, bought, getting sunset, and you have to move it. So when I was looking at what troubles we've had, this came in at the top of the list. Advancement in infrastructure technology, in application systems, so both would have complementing each other. You would have application coming up with new version or new platforms, causing a change in the underlying system. So you'll need to check out the underlying system. Sometimes you might be able to do it, sometimes you might not. And then you worry about how do you migrate? I mean, how do I take it out from one version to another, one system to another, and so on. Not only the technology, you also need to worry about the reskilling of manpower, because your manpower which you have, your own resources, might not be adapting to those new technologies or the new versions. So you'll need to train them. This is becoming one of the major challenge because the patience of users is running thin. Nobody is wanting to wait. They just want to keep click on something and get an answer back as if it would happen in a split of a second. Events have become more real time. Further, you need to do analysis and decision which are required by the organization. They feel that AI has become so pervasive that you just put in something and answers start coming out. And you want a comparative information between various systems that you have. This is, again, another killer, the experience and experiential technologies. So you would hear these words quite a lot. I call it era of experience because today, whatever you make and whatever you do, people are wanting to look at how good is it. Although the value might be the same that was coming out from a normal black and white kind of a system, but they are more worried about how it appears to be. The last one is the metaverse. We'll talk about it later, but it's going to be a game changer. And game changer I say because till now we've been having everything physical. We'll suddenly go into digital for everything. So this is one of the major challenges we might see as we go forward. Data is becoming huge. We've started using AI heavily, new sets of data which we never thought about earlier. The devices, I don't know how many of you are from a production environment. So we used to have devices which were, or machines which were working. Now we suddenly want every part of that machine to give us some data and then work on it. Unstructured data, earlier we used to have databases, relational, put the figures in it and that's it. You want now documents, you want images, videos and so on, which creates a huge mammoth data in the repository. The data movement creates another problem where the data from one place to another takes time and also costs. So if you go into systems which are not your own, you would even be paying for data movement between the systems. So typically, one challenge we were discussing was when you have multi-cloud environment, you might have to worry about how data is moving from one cloud to another. So one application to another, even that would cost. So besides the speed, obviously when you're moving data between various places, it would take time and your response, your experience would go down. And the biggest one of all, the budget. How much money do you really have? Do you have enough to do all this by yourself or you want somebody else to do it? Choices are plenty. So once you've taken care of these, if you only thought these were the problems that you had, there are two problems I will talk about and the third one later. So one is the information security. First instance of a CIO getting fired, as known to me personally, was 2006. Way back in 2006, one of the companies had a CIO who was managing a mail server, in their organization besides other things. And that got infected. And since it got infected, everything in the mail server was lost and this guy was chucked out. So that was in 2006, and must have been few more incidents that I am not aware of. But imagine today when there are enough of incentives for people to do something wrong. People are making livelihoods of it, and so there are more chances of things happening wrong with you, and so information security becomes really, really important. Privacy, if the law comes in, they're talking about 200 CR as the penalty, so half of the profitability of organizations would get wiped out. Once we do all that, any idea what is that differentiator? Any thoughts? How much time do we have?
Yes.
5 to 10 minutes, okay. Any quick one, just one. What would this differentiator be? Sorry? Okay. It will be? Innovation. Okay, yeah. So, while you do all this, so you can probably hire somebody to do all this, right? Suppose you have enough of money and your organization says, okay, I give you full freedom, you do whatever you want. What would you do? You give it to, say, TCS or, plenty of these companies, and you say, okay, Baba, take care of it. Like I think Airtel did 500 million deal or something like that way back in 2007? 6-7 around, yeah. Through IBM. So they said, you do everything and let me relax. But this is where the problem comes, the differentiator. So what is it that your organization does differently, which other organization which is in the same competitive environment doesn't do? So if both of them give it to, say, IBM and TCS, what is different for you? So you might end up in again working out something for your organization to create that differentiator, because business has to do better something. And if this technology is one great part, which is actually, as we heard Dr. Verma, can do wonders, why not we tap into it? So while the earlier ones were problems, I was just thinking about whether there are more problems. So these are whole lot of problems which are coming for you. Because people are going to really work with virtual reality, augmented reality, and customers, users, everybody wants this. Whether they understand half of it or not, but they want it. So they want drones to be passing over everywhere, capturing images, doing that surveys and so on. Metaverse, IoT has become a buzzword. AI/ML, if you do anything and you don't write AI/ML, then that you can understand that. Digital twin is creating a replica of a machine in a soft form, and then you work with that soft form machine to do whatever you wanted with the machine. So typically it's used in manufacturing quite a lot, if some of you are from manufacturing. So as we are getting into the closure time, so I'll try to finish it off. So these are the 4 areas that are thought, as we see it, important for all of us. While we do rest of it, this is what we should focus as a leader. The first is the information security. You cannot beat it, you cannot ignore it. Please do not ignore. That is my suggestion. It is very important, and keep it on the top of your list. Team building, nothing succeeds without a team, unless until you are one man like Airtel, that deal, and you give it to somebody, which again is supposed to have a team. But take care of your people, have empathy, look at their needs, create a vibrant culture in them. The kind of a innovative culture which creates those moments of eureka in your organizations. That is where the differentiation would come in from. Those are the people who can give you something to really rely upon and get you those differentiators. So these are 4 areas that I thought are important for us and could be for you. Thank you very much.